12 minutes to try to reconstruct the text. Try to rewrite, remember what you saw and to write it in sentences. I'm going to ask you now to put your pencils down or your pens down. I'm going to give you 1 more minute, but no writing now. Read the story again, and you have only 1 minute now, and just to pick up the details that you might have missed. Try to finish your reconstruction of the story. Okay. Sorry, I know you're probably not quite finished, but that's okay. So, in the initial exercise, the students are just asked to read the exercise. Sorry, to read the short, look at the picture and read the story. Now it's a pretty simple thing, and I think we can do so much more with this. Okay, by doing an activity like this, we're involving the students much more in, it's good text, and of course it's looking at the simple future tense. So if you do this kind of activity with your students, you can have them do exactly what you just did, and have them reconstruct the text. And the value in something like this is now they're not only reading, but they're listening to each other, they're speaking, they're using the grammar in context. You're clarifying, you're asking each other questions, and you're rewriting the story basically with your partner. And I think that's one way of expanding something that's so simple. We don't have to have more materials. We can just use this kind of exercise to really expand and work on the target language in more of an interactive, more using the language rather than a passive skill of just reading it. So when I've done this before, similar to what we just did, what you could do is, so usually if you give your students 5 minutes to read it maybe instead of 3 minutes, tell them to then speak with their partner. They have to write the sentences out because we're practicing the grammar here. So they have to write full sentences to reconstruct the text. The teacher can help. When I've done this before, I've put some questions on the board, so that will help just in case they can't remember. So for example, where are Maria and Arlene going? Where are they going to stay? So you can put some questions up to help guide your students, especially if they're at a bit of a lower level. You can put some questions up on the screen, and that will help them to reconstruct the text. When they're done, again, you give them a bit more time, and they do it again, and complete the text. And then you can have 2 groups, compare their text and see if they have similar answers or similar sentences. And then you can have them go to the book and compare how they did to the original text. And I just found that this was just one way of taking something quite typical in a course book and expanding it so that we're getting the students a little bit more involved in the target language. And then the next activity is a little more interactive. They have to write the words and they have to make sentences out of these. This is from a book, sorry, I'm just going to say it's from a book called English in Action. It's a 4 skills text that I think may be used in language programs probably all over the world. So even this exercise, I found that students can do this very quickly. So it seems like, wow, they're finished. And I made all the effort to make the exercise, copy the materials, and it took them about 8 minutes to do this exercise. So again, how can we make this so that it engages them a little bit more and that we're optimizing material like this? So, I mean, one thing I saw a teacher do with this, she took all the words, she put them on little strips of paper, and she gave each group an envelope, and they had to make the questions. And that took a little bit more discussion. Students had to make questions with putting the words together. And that, it took about 20 minutes. They were talking about the language, they were using the language, and I thought, well, it seems to be a good way to expand the exercise. And then they came back and then they did the exercise. So I think this is one example of a typical kind of exercise that you can expand from, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes into a whole lesson, where I think our students will be better at reaching the outcomes and learning more than just doing what's here on paper. Okay? Yeah. So what we've done with this. So what we did with this pretty simple exercise. We expanded the objectives. Okay, so it's more than just a reading exercise. Now their students are retelling, they're practicing their speaking, they're practicing vocabulary, pronunciation, they're explaining to each other, they're asking questions, and there's listening skills. They have to listen to their partner. I think the delivery, it created more opportunities to practice the language. Students were engaged, I think. And I think it's much more student-centered than the original lesson. And of course, we've exploited the material so that we're getting a lot more use out of them than in the original lesson. So that's one example of how we can expand what we're doing and to just take the stress off of teachers too. Okay, so we're not having to spend so much time preparing. I'm going to put up one more activity. And this is a reading exercise. And I've often find reading is a difficult subject to teach, to make it interesting and engaging and keep students involved. So I'm always looking for ways to look at how to teach reading. Now, sorry, 2 screens I think. Okay. I'm going to show a typical kind of nicely divided into paragraphs. And each paragraph covers a different subject or different topic. And then, of course, it's followed by comprehension questions. And I find that I'm always looking for alternate ways to get students to show their comprehension besides questions. And I think that, as I learned this morning, people use all sorts of, teachers are wonderful of how to look at how we can make this a bit more engaging. So with this one, I've seen, this is a lesson that I watched, and after I observed the lesson, the teacher and I talked about how to kind of improve what she had done with this lesson. So originally the students were given the whole reading, and they spent just too much time in the classroom reading. Okay? So again, what we talked about was, well, let's give this to students for homework. Okay? They can read this at home. It's not that long. They could have done it for homework. And when they came to class the next day, we divided the reading into paragraphs, and we cut them up. We put the students into groups of, I think it was 5, groups of 4 or 5, I can't remember what it was. And each student was given one little part of the text. They had to summarize it, explain it to the group, and they recreated the story or recreated the text in groups. Now they're speaking about the reading, they're using the language, they're demonstrating their comprehension, did they understand it? So a more interactive reading exercise. And then for comprehension, she still wanted to use the questions, and we thought, well, how can we make this a little bit more interesting? So she had a great idea. She put the questions on cards and put them in different parts of the room. Simple activity. And the students answered one question. She made a race out of it. And at this table, there were 3 questions. There was a question sheet. They read the questions, answered them. When they finished, they moved to the next table, 3 questions, and they moved around the room. And it was amazing on the next time when she did it, of how much more activity there was in the classroom. So just something as simple as, instead of students sitting down and doing questions, she spread them around the room, and she had students really active. And they still demonstrated, they still did the questions, but they were moving around in more of a game environment. So there's lots of things I think we can do to make the whole go beyond the comprehension question. The other thing that we talked about, she gave students different questions. Okay, so one group had 5 questions, 5 questions, 5 questions. They answered them. They did a jigsaw reading. They regrouped, and they quizzed the other students. And they asked them these questions to see if they can answer them. So I think we can look at how we can make the whole reading exercise a little bit more interactive. It was she said it was a fantastic lesson the second time around when she did it with another group, just by making it a bit more interactive. Okay? So that's just a couple of the last one I want to show is a listening. This is from the same book that we just looked at. I'm not going to play the listening. But listening, I think, also is, we often teach listening in a fairly kind of standard approach, where we introduce the topic, we review the vocabulary, so we play the listening, students listen once or twice, they answer some questions, and we review it. So it's kind of a standard approach to teaching listening. But I find it's a little bit unnatural. We don't usually listen like that in such a structured way. Listening is a lot more complicated than, read and answer, listen and answer the question. So I'm forever looking at ways of improving how we teach listening. So I thought this is an example from the same book, and this is just the script. Okay, the script is Sashi's Terrible Flight. So what a teacher did with this, she divided the class into 2 groups. This is before we listened. So she divided the class. Half the class, they were Sashi, and the other half, they were her best friends. Okay, so we divided into 2 groups. And each of them had a role to play. Sashi learned about she had little cards about Sashi's trip. So she learned about, all the Sashis learned about their trip. And the other group made up some questions based on some of the topics of the listening. So for example, the questions may be where? Where did she go? Flight details. What could go wrong? Food, delays, seats. So what they did after that is they did an interview. Okay, so if I'm Sashi and you're my friend, the friend asked me questions about my trip. And so I told her all about my trip. She asked me, where did you go? And what was the flight like? How was the food? So we exchanged that. And in a way, we're doing the same thing. We're listening to each other instead of a recording that is a little bit unnatural. It's more natural in our conversation when we're listening to each other because the conversation is not linear. So she asked me, how was your flight? Oh, it was terrible. What was wrong? Oh, the food was really bad. And so we've created a little bit more of an authentic listening situation. And you can use a script, and it's a lot easier. It's not difficult to set it up. And students loved it because they added a lot of extra detail to it, more than what was just in the script. And I thought, that's more of an authentic listening situation. I mean, we used the script, but after we finished, we listened to it. But by this time, they knew it all. They knew all the details. They had talked about it. They had listened to their partners and basically, more or less, did the same activity, but in a more authentic context. So I think we can go beyond the traditional way of teaching listening by using scripts and by assigning students roles and having them listen to each other, and then not just always listen to the tape or CDs, or aging myself there. All right, so there's just a couple of examples of activities that I think where we can really expand what we're doing and get our students a bit more engaged. Just going to show a couple more things. Again, in all of these situations, we've expanded the objectives, we've built on a stronger delivery, and we've engaged our students a little bit more with the materials that we're using. So I think I'm just going to skip over this. And this was more of a real-world listening activity. A lot of our students say to us, we can understand and listen in the classroom, but when I go outside, I can't understand anything. And I think we have to create opportunities where they're listening more to real language and not always to things that are beautifully recorded on CDs. All right, I'm just going to show a couple things about vocabulary. I call vocabulary the poor cousin. Because I find often vocabulary doesn't receive the attention it needs. To do well at the university level, if students are going on to academic study, they need to know a lot of words. This study was looking at 10,000 words at the first year university level. That's a lot of words. And I think often we teach students strategies about learning new words, like when they come across them in reading. We show them how to use context and give them clues about how to do that. But I think we also have to provide explicit instruction of high-frequency vocabulary. I think without doing this, we're doing our, as an examiner with both IELTS and TOEFL, this is the area where students have a lot of difficulty, is vocabulary, is what holds them back in terms of increasing their test scores. So I think it's often because we don't teach vocabulary. Often we teach it when it comes up, but not so much make it a part of our curriculum. Knowing a word there's lots of things you have to know in order to be able to use a word. This is from Norbert and Diane Schmidt's work. To know a word, we have to know all these things, not just the meaning of a word. That's not enough to know how to use it correctly. You have to know collocations. You have to know how frequent it is. What is it associated with? The word like hungry, well, to do with food, and we have to know all the associations. So vocabulary is very challenging, and I think we need to make it more a part of what we do. The fifth skill, I guess, in some ways. And I think one way is to use word frequency lists. Lori is going to put this presentation on the website so you can access some of these resources, because I don't have it may not be on your CD. I think we should, there's lots of, you can use word frequency lists. They're there, they're well researched, and they're available, and there are lots of resources for teachers on using frequency lists. Lex Tutor, I don't know if anyone's familiar with this website. Fabulous website. It has all the word lists from the academic word list to the general service list, the first 1,000, the second 2,000. So if you're looking for students always want to know what word should I learn. And I find directing them to word lists is one good way or as teachers, if we look at, well, these are the most common words in English, where should we be teaching them? What level? So if you look at Lex Tutor, you'll find the Oxford 3,000 word list. You'll find there's the academic word list, the general service list, all the word lists that I think will help us in what we do. And then there's one, this is just one example. This is University of Victoria in British Columbia. They have some, in terms of resources for teachers, this is a fabulous website for the academic word list. It has lots of exercises, hundreds of exercises. If you're using the academic word list, something like this I think is really useful for students, maybe as independent learners. If you don't have time to do it in your classroom, you can direct them there. I like to use technology a lot and websites, but we have to be careful because I still think it has to serve a clear purpose and be related to our objectives. I'm just going to run through a couple of others. I don't have time to do these, but we were looking at trying to create more interactive lessons. There are so many great resources that we can use besides our textbooks. This is a wonderful website that has both listening and reading. You can listen to a story, you can read a story. I think if you can do this kind of exercise where you divide your class, assign half of them one story, assign the other half a different story. They read the story, they listen to the story, they practice do the practice exercises, they discuss the story. I listen to a different story, you listen to a different story, and then same as what John was saying this morning, we get together and we share what we read. And there's a purpose then for listening, there's a purpose for reading, because I have to tell you what I read and you have to tell me. So I'm just going to quickly show you. This is a really good site because it's for lower level learners, it's not for advanced students, and it's by topic. So you can find readings and listenings on any of these topics. Some of them are more adult-oriented, but for example, the nature one, I looked at, these have videos, okay, so you can watch a video. Now let's look at farmers and the weather. That looks like an interesting topic. So they're quite short. Right? So they're not long, and they're short readings. You can listen to the reading also. Okay, so, and this is a basic story. If you have more advanced students, you can look at the full story. Okay, so it's abridged. And then what I love about this site are the activities. So many different stories from matching words. This is my favorite. It's a good vocabulary game. So you have to try to match the word. There's the meaning. And you have to find a word that matches it. Something that might happen. No, that doesn't work. 2 definitions. Then I try to find, another definition. What is like outside? Another definition. Sorry, that doesn't work. Okay. Possible. Which one? This one? Something might happen. Is it that one? So there's the answer. This is a really great kind of website, but you can, I think, if you don't have time in the class, you can direct students to this, but I use this site a lot, or I used to use it, with this kind of activity, a jigsaw activity. So assign some students this one, or you can choose 4 stories and assign everybody a different story. It's a good Monday morning activity. So Monday morning they have to come in and exchange what they read and explain the vocabulary and what was the story about. So I think that these are the kinds of materials that will keep our students engaged. They love it. Okay, and there's some of them that have videos, and you can also this is one, and I'm going to give you a couple last ones. I just came across this site, and this is similar to what John was saying about stories. This is a wonderful site of children reading stories. And it's British accents, but don't have time to listen to one, but I just found this. Whoops, oh, wrong one. Oh, it's the wrong link. Okay. I won't show it to you, but it's young children reading stories. What you can do is your students can read a story and upload it here, and they can hear themselves read it. And there are hundreds of stories that usually, if you use a story in your classroom, you can then listen to somebody reading the same story. And they're young kids aged about 6 through 15. Very cute, very cute. So again, something that you can easily use and then do some activities with it. Have students retell what they heard, just who were the characters. I went to one this morning, somebody was talking about telling stories. This is a really good site for that. All right, so I'm just going to wrap up because I'm going to leave these resources with you. You can access these. Lori said she'll put them on the website. But I think there are lots of great internet resources if we use them so that they are a integrated part of our curriculum and not busy work. But if your students want extra practice, then I think you can direct them. So these are some good reading sites, and also some good speaking and listening sites. So I'm just going to leave those with you. And the bottom ones here, these are where you can find good material for, the National Geographic site is fantastic for short little videos where you can create your own lessons on listening. All right, I'm just going to wrap up. And I think that basically it's sort of what we're talking about, maybe what this whole conference is also about. If students are to develop and be engaged in what they do, I think this is partially what they need. Okay. And I'm just going to leave that with you. And the last one, I came across something called flow. And I think our lessons to deliver effective lessons, we need something that I came across in this book called flow. And when you have flow, everything's good. Okay. The goals are clear. Feedback from the teacher is immediate. There's a balance between opportunity, so a little bit of challenge, but it's not too difficult. Students are concentrating. They're very deep in what they're doing. The present, they're here. They're not thinking about their weekend and what they're going to eat for dinner. Okay. There's no problem with control. They know we can do this. We can be successful at this. And I like this sense of time is altered. Sometimes when students say, wow, the class is over already, that's a good thing to hear from your students. And loss of ego means that they're not thinking about themselves when they're involved in something that's engaging. They're really involved in the activity and removed from it and much more sort of not just thinking about themselves, which sometimes is hard for teenagers. So that's it. Thank you very much.